Welcome to Threads of Sustainability, where you get to hear the passionate, informative, and engaging conversations of creatives, makers, manufacturers, and producers from all over the globe. We explore what sustainability can look like in the quilting, fiber, and textile world, and I'm your host, Bridget O'Flaherty, also known as the Sustainable Quilter. Hi there, welcome to another episode of Threads of Sustainability. I am your host, Bridget O'Flaherty. I have a really interesting guest this week. Amari Thomsen of Next Gen Quilting is a modern millennial quilter, and she's based out of San Francisco. She specializes in making quilts that are sustainable to both the planet and your wallet. She focuses on ways to use upcycled and zero-waste sewing solutions, as well as budget-friendly hacks to save money and create beautiful modern quilts along the way. I found Amari on Instagram, and I was really enjoying and interested in the way that she connects with her following and the way that she is approaching quilting from a perspective of a new sewer. And we got to talking, and I was really enjoying what she was doing, so I thought we would have a chat and to try and get this younger perspective. But this week, there was this little kerfuffle that happened on the socials, and Amari actually took one of the big designers to task for putting out they're asking for influencer applications to do some work with their fabric lines and be paid to do some social media blog posting and various other promotions for their fabrics. And Amari took them to task for the amount that they were offering to pay. And I think it's amazing to start seeing some advocates coming out of younger folks saying, no, this isn't good enough. Sewists need to be paid what they're worth. And, we need to start addressing this. And it's a really interesting timing when we just had this conversation with Sam Hunter last week about valuing our work as sewists and creators and making sure that we have sustainable businesses, because it is a big part of sustainability. We have to have reasonable wages for the work that we do. And for some reason, craft in the world always kind of gets looked at in this secondary way. And that it's kind of steeped in a lot of deep histories. Sam and I got into that conversation. You can go back and listen to that episode. But I just thought it was amazing that Amari decided that she was going to be a voice in all of this. And kudos to her for doing that. So if you're interested, you go follow her on Instagram and you can see the conversation that she had with the designer. It was really well done. Anyway, so I had a fantastic conversation with her as well. We talked about some really interesting things about perspectives of being an artist from a younger perspective. So we'll jump into the conversation, and I really hope you enjoy it. I have an exciting guest today, Amari Thomsen, who is out of San Francisco, and she's got a business online called Next Gen Quilting. And the cool thing about Amari is that she's a lot younger than I am. And she's jumping into this. And I was so curious to know kind of what her story is. Usually when I talk to folks, I'm asking what their background, their story, like, was it a part of their mother or growing up? And I want to know those questions from you as well. But usually there's a lifetime's worth of diving in and out of textiles, but you're a lot younger. So I'm really curious to know more about your story. And I kind of want, not that I'm going to harp on the fact that you're younger, because doesn't mean that you're inexperienced at all. But it's just a curiosity to me because you've got such a different lens that you're coming to all this with. And so that's what I'm excited and curious to talk to you about. So welcome to Threads of Sustainability. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I found you on Instagram.
Yes.
I was watching what you were doing and I thought, wow, oh my God, this person has got this huge following and she's doing some really cool stuff around quilting. Tell me how that kind of happened for you, because you weren't thinking, hey, I'm going to be an Instagram influencer and jump into this world.
Yeah, no, it definitely didn't. So I have only been quilting for, let's see, it's going to be almost 3 years now. I started in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020.
Okay.
So I've only been quilting for a few years. And it all started with this sort of like late night internet search for some sort of crafty quarantine hobby to ultimately to pass the time because I wanted to like emerge from the whole shelter in place that we had going on with some kind of
Like,
new
so how
skill.
early on was it? Like how long had we been?
Yeah, it's funny that you said that. It was in August of 2020. And when I
Okay.
started, I thought like, gosh, maybe this is too late into the pandemic to like start a hobby because this is probably going to all be over like soon.
Right.
And so I actually felt like late to the game. I'm like, man, I should have started like my Instagram or my hobby like sooner because, that all started in like March, April, and now it was already August. Little did I know that even today in, August, almost August 2023,
Still
we're still
dealing
talking
with this stuff.
about
Yeah.
it and dealing with it. Yes. So it was in August of 2020 and I was looking just for something to pass the time. And as we were like sheltering in place, I just thought, gosh, there's like so much time to pass. Wouldn't it be cool to emerge from all this with some kind of new skill? And I was doing some like home things around my house, organizing and whatnot. And I needed to sew something. I don't even remember what it was, but I was researching online and somehow I stumbled upon like the quilting community. I think it was maybe Susie Quilt's website. And
Okay.
I like
Okay.
got deeply immersed into all of her content. And before I knew it, I was like, I think I want to start quilting. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know. I don't have
So you'd
any of the
never
supplies.
sewn anything really before?
I owned a sewing machine. It was
Okay.
a 20 plus year old sewing machine that I had from when I was a teenager that my mom gave me. And she had taught me when I was a teenager how to sew like a straight line, like super basics. This is how the sewing machine works and fabric goes through and you can sew a straight line. And I wanted to know that at the time because I was sewing like pillowcases for my
Sure.
bedroom at the time, like a teenage life. I wanted like curtains or pillowcases or something to match. And so she showed me how to use it, but I didn't have any real skill beyond that. I mean, I wasn't sewing any kind of garments. I never followed any kind of pattern. I hemmed a couple pants, I think, for my dad at one point in time
Right, right.
with like really minimal scrappy skill set.
Yeah.
They were work pants that, like for around the house, not for like wearing out in
Yeah,
public.
yeah.
So I had like super minimal sewing skills. But I felt like there was enough resources online and like the whole quilting community that I could figure it out
When you
and
had the
learn.
tool, which is a good
Yes,
start. Yeah.
right. The sewing machine, I had like some ancient thread, and I was like, I think I've got at least enough to start. And like little did I know, as I was like going down this whole rabbit hole, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't like what is a rotary cutter? I don't have any rulers. I like, all these things that I now, of course, have. But it started, yeah, as like I said, as a pandemic hobby. And I started an Instagram account to just like document what I was doing and to sort of like journal it along the way, more for like my own selfish reasons, was I needed the community to help me.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I had so many questions. I was like, what is the difference between polyester and cotton thread? Like, what do I need to know about that? How do I, like, why does the stitching look weird? It's all getting bunched up and the tension is all wrong. And the online quilting community, specifically on Instagram, is incredible. I have not met, knock on wood, a single troll on there. Everybody is so incredibly kind and generous with their tips and their just demeanor. And so I was drawn to stick with it because of, I think, all of the encouragement that I got and just all of the
Yeah.
help, that it's like, nobody was pointing fingers and laughing at you doing it wrong. And in fact, there were a lot of new people who were following along with me being like, I don't know this either. And I want to know the answer. So like, can you tag me on this post when somebody chimes in and answers your question? So it sort of spiraled into this community from there.
But that's super cool. And so it just started growing for you. How did you start bringing in the ideas around sustainability? Because that is a big part of what you do, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that actually, when I first started quilting, I didn't have a good appreciation for the cost of fabric.
Sure.
You think, like, I think from an outsider looking in, you think of quilting and like putting together scraps of fabric, you think it would be a relatively inexpensive hobby. It seems like you're just taking scraps of fabric and you're turning it into something of your own versus buying new. That seems really cost effective. I was blown away by the cost of fabric when I started looking into this. And like, before I knew it, I was like trying to plan for my first quilt, and my shopping cart and price tag was just like ticking up and up and up. And so I started to think to myself, gosh, there's got to be a way to do this more inexpensively, especially for people who are starting out who don't have a fabric stash. I was seeing all these people on Instagram who the joke is you have so much fabric, you don't know what to do with it. People have sewing rooms and bookcases full of fabric. And I
Yeah.
didn't have any of that because I was starting from zero.
Right.
And so I needed tons of fabric just to have like a quilt, do a quilt pattern that required, I don't know, 10 different fabrics or something to make it colorful and interesting.
Yeah.
And it was really expensive.
Well, this was also pandemic time too, when at the beginning, like it was hard to get fabric and the
Mm-hmm.
online space just kind of exploded in the quilt world too, right?
Yeah, I remember placing my first order for fabric and the shipping timeline was something absurd. It was like, I don't know, several weeks, which it felt like a lifetime in when you're in the
Right.
pandemic and you're like waiting every day, like looking at your watch, like what day are we on? And in the days of, where you can get Amazon Prime in 2 weeks and shipping for most fabric stores these days is far less than that. But I remember looking at that and being like, gosh, it's going to be like a really long time before I get this fabric. It's going to cost me a lot. Like I want to get started like yesterday. I wanted to start, I want to start quilting now. I want to start sewing something. And so I started looking into like what I had in my closet because another pandemic hobby was cleaning out my closet. So I
Of
had gone
course.
through, as everybody's like, there's nothing to do. So why not just go clean out your closet? And I had a whole stack of chambray shirts in my
Okay.
closet, which are they sort of look like denim, but they're like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
cotton
It's the
fabric.
two layers of color, right? That's the chambray.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had I had maybe like 6 different chambray shirts and they were different blues. And I remembered reading online that you could quilt with anything that was 100% cotton, so long as it wasn't stretchy. So I started cutting those shirts apart and I decided I was going to make a quilt out of it. And I used those shirts and some sheets from my closet to create this really cool quilt. It's still one of my favorites quilts. And it just was incredibly popular on my Instagram account as people were following along with what I was
Yeah.
doing, cutting apart all these shirts, trying to like organize the blues in sort of an ombre way that like made the quilt look cohesive and modern while still using a lot of these upcycled fabrics. Because I think a lot of people think like, oh gosh, if I shop for fabric or shirts at Goodwill or I make something from upcycled fabric, it's going to look like something that belongs in like
Like folk art, right? Like
yes,
folky,
yeah, like
funky. Yeah.
faux and like not super colorful or modern looking. And so I
Right.
wanted to show that it didn't have to look like that. It didn't have to be that way. You could still take on a lot of these like modern aesthetics that were out there in the modern quilting world while using upcycled fabric and sort of taking the two, combining them into one.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And so what about patterns at this point? Were you just finding patterns online?
Yeah, I was finding the patterns online. I was selecting specifically super, super beginner friendly patterns because again, I didn't like the first block I ever made, I think was like a log cabin block. And then the first quilt I made was a rail fence quilt where you're just sewing strips together and alternating the blocks. And so when I did the chambray quilt, that was the first time, I think that was the first time, or at least it was close to the first time that I started making like half square triangles.
Okay.
And so I had been looking at patterns. I had bought like a bunch of patterns. I had read through some of them and honestly, a lot of it was super overwhelming. I had no idea what I was reading or what I was looking at. And I found a pattern for the chambray quilt that was super beginner friendly and just started there. And yeah, I do still make people's quilt patterns. I don't write any patterns myself,
Okay.
or I haven't yet. I feel like I'm still in the following along phase of my quilting journey.
Yeah. And so what are people like you've got some folks following you who are have been on a similar journey and are looking for tips and stuff, but what are you starting like how has it shifted for you when you first started out you were asking for help. How has it shifted for you over the last few years?
Yeah, I when I first started, I was asking for help, and a lot of people had given me tips. And so now, what has shifted, like for instance, an example would be making franken batting. So putting together like strips of leftover batting and using a zigzag stitch to make a piece large enough that you need for a project. So when I first started quilting, I didn't have a lot of batting, and I was trying to repurpose what I had so I didn't have to buy more. And somebody gave me the tip on, have you ever thought about making franken batting? And I was like, well, what is this?
Right.
And so, I learned how to do it. And now every time I'm making a project, I make sure to just sort of carry that message forward and show my followers and remind them how to make franken batting, and that it's what it is and how to do it, and that it's super, super easy and super resourceful. So I think it's sort of transitioned, to answer your question, from asking the questions and receiving the answers from the community to now sharing those answers with the community in sort of how-to tutorial styles, so that anybody that's new to following me or is following me for tips gets to see what I've learned along the way. And I will be the first to say that everything that I learned is based on YouTube and the internet. I can take zero credit for any of
Yeah,
it. I
yeah.
didn't come up with any of these ideas, just resharing what I've learned along the way.
Hey everyone, it's Bridget, the Sustainable Quilter. I wanted to let you know about the Green Stitchers Hive. It's our brand new online community. It's a welcoming space where we can connect, share knowledge and resources, and support each other in our journey towards sustainable textile practices, whatever that means to you: quilting, weaving, knitting, felting, anything. Inside the Hive, we have workshops, monthly challenges, live Q&A sessions, live lectures with guest speakers, and opportunities to connect with other like-minded people. You can access the Green Stitchers Hive on my website at bridgetoflaherty.com. Can't wait to see you there. Sure. Well, and I think that that's not an uncommon thing, right? Like all quilters learn from somewhere, and then you take it and make it your own and do your own thing, right? Like, and even artists, we're all borrowing knowledge and reinterpreting it and putting it back out into the world, right?
Yes, yes.
So tell me a little bit more about your materials now. So you were using what you had in your closet. I'm assuming you kind of used that up at this point. So what are you doing now for your materials?
Yeah. So I went through my closets with a really creative eye, and I feel like I still will find something here or there that I can repurpose and use. I just a couple years ago, I was running low on, and I had this like mustard colored fabric that I was using in a quilt, and I was running low, and I was like, gosh, I don't want to buy. I was just using my scraps, and I was like, gosh, I don't want to buy more mustard yellow fabric just to finish this quilt. And then I remembered I had this dish towel in my kitchen that I never use. And I was like, maybe that dish towel is made of a fabric that could actually come in handy. It was like 100% cotton dish towel that I only used a few times. And so I get comments from my followers all the time, like, remember that time that you put that dish towel, that you used that dish towel in your quilt? That was so cool. And I'm like, yeah, I just, every once in a while I get inspired to like really dig through the depths of whatever's left around my house to find things, or like if I'm finished or wanting to like refresh the throws in my living room. I've done a quilt where I took apart like a faux fur throw that was in my living room and used
Okay.
that for a quilt back. So sometimes it's like in the spirit of maybe I'm like wanting to buy something new for my house. And so
Sure.
instead of just throwing away the old thing or like shoving the old thing in the closet, thinking about a way to repurpose it in a quilt project.
Cool.
But also I've looked to like online resale, like e-commerce sites, and not necessarily, I know a lot of people that upcycle will look at sites that do like secondhand fabric of other quilters that are selling their
Yeah.
fabric. But I actually find a lot of fun in like looking for secondhand clothing online, like button down shirts. I'll look on like ThreadUp or Mercari and try to find some, good quality button down shirts. I've actually recently been on a Liberty of London clothing kick where I have been purchasing like J. Crew had done a line with Liberty of London fabric for their store,
Okay.
and there are a lot of previously loved shirts from J. Crew made in Liberty of London fabric. And I did this whole experiment of ordering a bunch of Liberty of London shirts, making sure they were the same like fabric and textile type as what you would purchase from like if you were buying Liberty of London on the Bolt. And from the shirts that I've purchased, they were. And so I've been using those in projects and like cutting them apart.
These
And
are
so,
all upcycled, like, or recycled shirts
yeah,
that have been worn and previously worn, and now they're on a reused site.
yes, now they're on a secondhand site. So ThreadUp is a secondhand site where people can send they're actually a really cool site. You can send clothes from your closet to them and they will post them on their website for sale. And then once they sell on their site, you get like a small chunk of change as a kickback. But if it doesn't sell, they'll recycle it. They have a whole clothing recycling program
Okay.
that I don't know I'm not an expert in what happens to clothes if you give them to Goodwill or Salvation Army or whatnot, but the program that ThreadUp has seems to be potentially a step above and going like a little bit above and beyond and making sure that textiles are recycled appropriately.
Yeah, that's a big thing, right? Like there's conversations around the, like here in Canada, we've got Value Village, Salvation Army, various places like that. And there's a lot of evidence that's showing that only about 30% of what's donated into those stores actually makes it onto the floor.
Wow.
And so there's
Really?
70% of it.
30%.
Yeah, it's only 30%, and
Oh.
70% of it is getting shipped off to fabric sorting centers where it's sorted by fabric type. Some of it is sent off to make shoddy fabric, which goes into the automotive industry. Some of it
Mm-hmm.
is sent off to for other cotton, like cotton bats and cotton insulations and that kind of stuff. There's a
Okay.
cotton section as well, but then a lot of the polyesters end up, they nobody wants them, and they end up in bundles that get shipped off to like Kuala Lumpur and into South Africa and other areas where they are sent into secondhand clothing markets, but when they don't sell there, then they end up in landfills.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of, it's not in our backyard, it's not our problem, but yeah, it's a good 50% of everything that's donated into, with good intentions, into these
Yeah.
recycling centers, or that actually leave the country and go somewhere
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. And the only 30%. Wow. I'm blown away by that. It's
Yeah,
like
it's pretty shocking, huh?
it's so unfortunate.
It's kind of that they can't sell it. Like either they can't sell it because it's not clean, or it's got rips and tears, or it's just not a sellable item. Like, so there are
Yeah.
certain material,
Yes.
certain clothes that are more sellable. And there's also just the volume. They
Yeah.
can't keep up with the volume that's coming
Yeah.
in.
I know. I think during the pandemic, the Goodwill and Salvation Armies around me started turning away
Yeah, same here. They shut
donations.
down. They shut down.
Yeah.
They couldn't handle it because
They
we
had too
nobody was
much.
able to go in and
Yeah.
purchase.
To
Everybody was
shop.
cleaning
Mhm.
out their closets,
Yeah.
trying to get rid of stuff.
Yes.
We had a
Yeah.
bag that we kept here for 2 years because I had nowhere to send it.
Oh man, yeah. Well, if it's closed, you can always send it to ThreadUp. They provide free shipping labels, and they will if it's stuff that's like sellable in terms of they just do women's clothing. So if it's
Okay.
sellable, they post it on there, and you get a buck or two here or there,
Yeah.
better than a poke in the eye.
Sure, sure.
And
Well, and it's going somewhere that is being used, right?
yeah, and if it doesn't sell, they offer to send it back to you.
Okay.
If it doesn't sell, they offer to send it back to you, or they say we can recycle it and send it through our recycling program. So I've bought, clothes on there for myself, just for my closet for shopping before, but then also I found a lot of button-down shirts or similar for quilting on there as well. So that's one resource. And then the other one that I mentioned is called Mercari,
Yeah.
and that's actually a like consumer driven platform. So it's like eBay, but you can post your own stuff on there. Other people can bid on it and purchase it. So
Okay.
there's a lot of secondhand clothing on there as well that I've been able to find for quilts too.
So here's a question I have for you that I get asked a fair bit. It's a conversation that comes up a fair bit. Is I guess, the ethics behind buying used clothing that could be used as good clothing
Yeah.
for people who are in need of that, especially from these stores like Salvation Army, where they are reduced costs from a new piece of clothing. And it's often helping out communities that don't have the funds to buy new clothing. Like I just would love to hear your thoughts around that, because some people are saying, especially in the extra large market, which is something that we often will reach for with the shirts, because you get more fabric in an extra large shirt pretty much for the same amount of money.
Yeah.
But there are plus size folks who are needing those and don't necessarily have access to them in the same way. So just
Yeah.
curious to get your thoughts around that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I would say based on that statistic that you just shared, there doesn't seem to be a shortage of donations of things that could potentially be put out on the floor if what's out there gets purchased by whomever. But then I would also say, secondly, when I'm shopping for things online, I also will sometimes try to purchase a size that there are a lot of,
Yeah.
so that if that is the case, maybe there's a bunch of mediums, and so I'll, purchase that size instead of the XL, so that there is something still available to somebody who wants it.
Instead of looking at that as scarcity and, oh, I better get this because I'm not going to be able to, looking at that going, maybe I don't need that one, and I can go to one that there isn't scarcity on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an interesting way of thinking about that for sure.
Yeah. I've also bought, things that are on the extremely smaller size or smaller side of things. That is because that's also, an area that sometimes you think about like the middle range sizes being the most popular. And so trying not to, gobble up all of that stash, but maybe like the
Right.
ones that are super, super tiny, nobody's going to want, or maybe the ones that are on the larger side, there's going to be fewer people that want them. There's a lot of ways to think about it, I think, but ultimately, I don't think there's a scarcity of donations,
I agree completely. I
especially
agree.
based on that statistic you just gave, which
Yeah,
is
no
new to
kidding,
me.
right? I know. It's like, no, we're not really actually short of
Mhm.
of those clothing, but there might be regions where there is that kind of shortage of that sizing and or specific, like somebody else was saying, like taking sheets, perfectly good sheets that are a good set that somebody could actually use. I try
Yeah,
to avoid the sets. I might take a
yeah,
single sheet if there's just a single standalone sheet. I might look for that. But if I see a set, it's like, somebody actually might be able to use that. So I'm going
yeah,
to leave that behind. So I
yeah,
think it's making conscious decisions and mindful purchasing. I think that's sort of the key in all of it, is thinking about these different things and how we could maybe do better, even in these choices of upcycling, right?
yeah, yeah. And it doesn't even have to be, shirts or sheets from a secondhand thrift store. It could be, partnering with another quilter and swapping scraps of fabric.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, I had a friend that I met on Instagram send me a whole box of her fabric scraps. I had
Cool.
multiple people send me boxes. I had to start turning them down, but
Right.
boxes of fabric scraps that they were just like, I have all these scraps and I don't want to throw them away, but I'm not a scrappy quilter and I don't think I'm ever going to
Right.
use them. Like, can I offer to send them to you? Or like, would you take them off my hands if you send me $5 or $10 and for
Yeah,
shipping? So I think there's like other ways to get fabric too that's like upcycled in a way that
for
doesn't
sure.
take away from the community in terms of clothing.
For sure. And before we got onto the recording here, we were talking about Rhoda Weaver, who is sewing through Fog, a quilter out of San Francisco as well. She's nearby you. She's actually created an online resource that you can go on, and it's like a Google Maps with links to all of the, well, not all, but an enormous resource of fabric upcyclers and recyclers in the US, and it's starting to reach beyond the US. So she's
Oh,
starting to get
wow.
this really great database, and that's available free on her website. So you can go and see that and see all those resources there. It's really, really cool.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, yeah, definitely recommend it. So I'm curious about the drivers for you around sustainability and how, like, is this just something that isn't of course for you? Is this something that has been in your life? Have you always kind of had this idea around thinking around sustainability, around community, around that kind of stuff? Has that been part of your upbringing? Is that normal for your
Yeah.
generation? I'm
Um,
hopeful. Please say
yeah, I
yes.
think, yes, I think that my generation is definitely thinking about sustainability more front and center than others. I also think that the millennial generation has been through a lot financially with
Sure. Sure.
with like when I graduated from college, it was the 2008 financial crisis, and nobody could get a job. You couldn't get a credit card. You couldn't, it was like all of these things. Everyone had student loans, coming out of their eyeballs. And now we're sort of living in a world where the housing market is insane. And so I think my generation, and I just speak from personal experience, that sometimes you feel like you can't catch a break, and we're like on this constant
Well, yeah.
we're like financial roller coaster, just like the years of things that we've lived through, and then the pandemic. And so personally, I've always, I grew up in a very resourceful family. We always were doing budget friendly things, but I sort of carried that over just out of necessity into my adult life. Just getting started as a young professional, early on when it was the financial crisis, and now living out in San Francisco, which is one of the most expensive cities in the United States.
Yeah.
So you can't live out here without a budget. So, out of necessity, out of a resourceful upbringing, and then out of just pure interest with the sustainability sort of being front and center, I think in a lot of people's minds in my generation.
Yeah. And so, but this isn't your full-time gig. Like
Mm-mm.
this isn't paying your
No,
bills. This
no,
is
no,
something
no.
you do because you love doing it.
Hmm.
And it's a little bit of extra cash where you can.
Yeah, I work full time. This is not my full time job. This is my nights and weekends fun
What's your
time.
full-time job?
I work as a dietitian, so I'm in the nutrition field. I work for a food and beverage company doing food innovation out here
Oh,
in the Bay Area. And the company that I work for does a lot around sustainability as well, for sort of aligned with their values and missions. So I live and breathe it in a different vein for my professional job, but it's fun to bring that light to the quilting world too.
well, and I think that we kind of infuse these things into our lives in all aspects of our lives. Like when you're going shopping for food, when you're going shopping for housewares, for whatever you have in your house, you got this mindset and this knowledge of how things are produced and the impact that that production has on the people who are doing that producing, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's food or clothing, textiles, or any other item that we have in our household, you get this awareness when you're in it in any aspect. Suddenly, then it trickles into the rest of your life because you can't
Oh
unknow
yeah.
what you know.
I know, I know. It's so true. Like I hate throwing things away. I have like a pile of things that I need to post online to just see if I can sell them before I decide to donate or throw them out. In my car, I have a whole bag of diapers that don't fit my daughter anymore that I'm going to donate somewhere. I need to do some research and find out where those need to go. But
Yeah.
that, because like you start to think about these things in all aspects of your life of like, I don't want anything to end up in these in landfills. When you hear about the statistics of how many textiles are thrown away
Yeah.
by each average American every year,
80
it's
pounds a year.
mind-boggling.
80 pounds a year.
80 pounds. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
80 pounds a year, the average American throws out.
And it doesn't just go away.
No.
It has to go somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and I've been finding it really interesting to realize that in the polyester world, all these polyesters that we're shipping off to be somewhere else, those are plastics.
Yes.
And those plastic, every single piece of plastic we have ever created on this planet, ever since the 1930s when we first started making plastic, still exists today on the planet somewhere.
Yeah.
And the polyester materials are a part of that. So for me, it's really exciting to see the recycling that's going on in the polyester world and in the plastic world.
Yeah.
I think we need to go way farther than where we're at right now, but some of it is very exciting. But I also had this conversation with somebody recently saying, if you are recycling in some way a polyester, a shirt that we would never want to wear again because we don't put polyester on our bodies, but we recycle that into a quilt or into a braided rug or something like that, or put it into the center of a poof that we've made or whatever, it's being saved from landfill. And it's a way of us securing it from becoming a problematic piece of material. And I just went, oh, that's really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
And it's making me think about polyester in different ways because I've always leaned towards the cottons and the natural materials. Like it just makes me feel so much better about that process. But that made me go, oh, interesting. Interesting to
Yeah.
think about it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, that's me digressing. Tell us where people can find you. Where can people find you?
Yes, so I'm on Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Next Gen Quilting. I started a Threads account. We were just talking about this before
Yeah.
we got on the call. I did jump on the Threads bandwagon. I'm actually having a lot of fun with it. I'm on Threads at Next Gen Quilting too. And what I have been doing is sharing a little bit of like the behind the scenes of just everyday life over there, which doesn't make its way onto Instagram. So if you're interested in just following along with my life as a full-time working mom who's trying to quilt in her non-existent free time,
Yes.
that's where you can find me commenting on those aspects of my life over there. But all things
Awesome.
quilting will be on Instagram. I'm on
And do
Instagram.
you have a website as well?
I don't know.
Nope,
So
you're
I'm just
just
on
social media.
Instagram. Yeah, I have a
Cool.
link in my Instagram profile that links out to a couple different like products that I use or places where I've been featured or guest blogged on. But it's not a
Not a
full
website
website.
for you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's been really interesting talking to you, and I don't know that I got to all the questions I wanted to get to, but I don't want to have this go too long. And maybe I'll have you back again and see what else you're doing in another year and
That would
what
be
you're up
great.
to. Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I just love having those kinds of conversations, especially with younger folks that are coming into the industry. It is so exciting. She's not a lot younger than me. I like to think of 20 years as not that much younger than me, but she is of a younger generation. She's got a different mindset. And it's like talking to my kids who are in their 20s right now. They just have this different perspective because of the things that have happened to them culturally, and just like we do as Gen Xers have these different ideas of how we maneuver through our lives, and because it's based on things that influenced us really strongly when we were younger. And I think that it's really interesting to see the change in the way of what's normalized in those generations, and how it's shifting the way that the culture and society is approaching things. And I think it's really exciting and really awesome. I'm really going to keep an eye on Amari. I can see she's doing great things, and she's becoming a leader. And I think that that's super exciting. She is somebody to watch out for because she's going to be in this for a long haul. And she's working from her heart, and she's working with her own set of ethics that work really well for her. And she's sticking to that. And I really admire that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode as well. Shoot me an email. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, or find me on social media. I'm on Instagram or Facebook, and have a chat about the episode. I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for joining me and listening to Threads of Sustainability. I really appreciate all the support that I've received over the last year. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can go over to my website and you can buy me a cuppa, and that helps keep the lights on here. You can also follow, and share the podcast with people that you know that might be interested. If you're interested in joining a community where we talk about all the different kinds of things around sustainability and share projects and share our journeys with each other, you can join the Green Stitchers Hive. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. You can send me an email. I'd love to hear from you and hear what you think about the podcast. Have a great day.